Greetings everyone, Core here, and it's time for another midnight review. And this week I went to go see Crimson Peak, which is the new movie directed and also co-written by Guillermo Del Toro. Um, if you've seen any of the movies that I've reviewed, or you've probably seen, I've mentioned how I like Guillermo Del Toro and his movies and his writing. Um, this is something that Crimson Peak is kind of like a back to square one kind of style. It feels a lot like Pan's Labyrinth, where it's very mystical, but also it feels like, you know, he directs it like two movies, but splices them together pretty much. Where, excuse me, where Pan's Labyrinth is like a, Nazi era, you know, movie where it's about a girl and her father who's a leader of one of the concentration camps that they're living out there, and then she falls upon this magical, whimsical kind of world. So it's almost two separate movies, but that are almost polar opposites. Because you have a mystical movie and then you have Nazis. So it's pretty polar opposites, I would say. And this is kind of the same thing. This one's I mean, not as polar opposites, but you get the idea. For a while, it feels like just an old late 1800s not Victorian, but early American industrial age movie, because it's a guy trying to start up a company, pretty much doing clay and stuff, and then he goes to this group of people in America that are investors, because they all have their own businesses and stuff, and they've all done very well. And then he ends up falling in love with this woman, the daughter of one of the steel building contractor, I believe, guy. Um, and that's a movie in itself. But then you have these very haunting uh, figures, for these ghosts that the first one, it's right off the bat, pretty much it's the mother of the girl, of the daughter. She's not a girl because she's old enough, because she ends up marrying the guy trying to make it, the whole thing. I'm trying not to give too much away, but it's an industrial age movie that is kind of like a love story in a way, but then also there's horror aspect. But that's what I like about Del Toro's horror, is not so much jump scares. Granted, they does have the music, to emphasize some of the movements or some of the more dramatic moments, but it's not a typical horror movie, because that's what I like Del Toro. It's storytelling. It's almost like old school, horror movie without the jump scares. It's like one, two here and there, but when I was watching it, most of the people were actually getting freaked out just as the monster's just on screen, or the ghost is on screen, slowly coming to the woman, because the way that the designs are really cool. They look like they're there. It doesn't look fake, because I'm pretty sure he probably had a real person, dressed up like how he usually does, and then they just, layered it over the background, stuff like that, kind of like old-fashioned way, not CG. I mean, there is CG and stuff, because some of the smoke effects and everything can't do that too easily, at least, with live action. But the person is live action, you could tell. Even there's really not too much CG on the person. It's just like for effects that enhance, which that's usually what he likes to do. He likes to have a physical person there, but enhance it with CG, so everything blends in, especially when you go CG heavy. So that's why it looks good. I don't know. I mean, I liked Pan's Labyrinth. I had to watch it a couple times just to really appreciate how it was. Probably the same thing with this one, but I kind of, I'm older. I watched it, of course, when I'm older, to compare to Pan's Labyrinth, which I watched, at least 8 years ago, 5 years ago. Um, so it's a different mindset that I have, and especially now that I'm doing these reviews. So, I didn't do a Pan's Labyrinth review back then, but yeah, Crimson Peak, it's really interesting, because, like I said, he combines like two genres, and you forget sometimes, because he'll stick to one. He'll do the horror at the start, and then he'll switch it to this story of two people falling in love, and then all of a sudden there's more horror, and then it goes back to the love story, and then there's more horror, and then it's like he does a very good job making you jump to these different sections, and then you forget. You're like, oh, this is supposed to be kind of scary, or this is supposed to, and then you get these moments, and it's like some people were just cringing. There are some cringe moments that are just like, guy likes practical effects too much, and people aren't used to that. They're used to CG, so when they see someone, or something getting physically, you know, destroyed or physically hit or something like that, uh, it's definitely jarring because people are used to fake, and he's making something real there that's physically there, and it's getting hit. So that's really cool. Like I said, I'm trying not to do too many spoilers because I want people to see this. But yeah, if we break it down, story was really good. Directing was great. Like I said, it's really cool how he pretty much combines two. He mashes up two separate movies into one, and they mash up very well. It's really good. I really like how it draws you out and you forget you're watching this kind of movie because it goes to a different kind, and then it goes back. It just goes back and forth, but it doesn't feel like he sets a nice decent amount of time in each one to draw it out, and then you forget, and then it goes to the other one, and it's like, whoa, it totally feels like two different movies. It doesn't feel like two different movies. That's how well it blends. That's what I was trying to say. Um, but yeah, music's really cool, really nice, really subtle most of the time. So it's not getting too crazy, but it's definitely fits very well. Acting is really well. I loved it. I can't say there really wasn't anyone I didn't like. I mean, they all felt like they were doing, 100%, if not more, really trying, which I think that's Del Toro. He brings out the best in some people. So that's really good. And he also knows who to pick, of course. Um, but yeah, the story, try not to. Have you seen the trailers? The trailers do make it does make it seem like it's more horror style, which I guess that's the same with Pan's Labyrinth. If you watch the trailers that they did for that, it seemed like it was more horror based, um, but it's technically not because of how much time they spent in both parts. They spend more on just like this story, this love story, than they do in the horror aspect. But they almost have equal screen time. So the trailers are, I mean, it makes you think it's more horror, but it's really not. So that's what I like about it. It draws it out. It's a classic horror. It's not, this new horror, scary movie, jump scares. It's builds, the fear in you when you see these monsters coming out of the ground. The shadows, the hands just forming, and the blood flowing off of them, and they're just there, and you're waiting for something, and it doesn't quite happen the way you think, and that's what scares you even more. So yeah, it's a good movie. I'll definitely give it a good 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. It's different from what most people think of horror for nowadays. So it's definitely something that, like I said, when I was in the audience, a lot of people were grimacing almost on every scene where they had one of those ghosts. They were cringing, they were like waiting for the jump scare, and it just didn't come, but yet that made them more scared. So it was really cool. I loved it, actually. That I love the audience reactions compared to the actual, scares and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so go see this movie, please. Del Toro, he's hasn't put out a bad movie yet, and he's probably one of the most best, you know, solid directors out there for sure, because he knows what he wants and he does what he wants. And I believe this one, it was one of his more passion projects after Pacific Rim. He dropped a lot of stuff just to do Crimson Peak. I mean, Pacific Rim was the reason he got to do Crimson Peak. They wanted this big thing, and then he did it for him, and now he gets to do what he's good at, and that's horror. So, until next time, guys. Later.